I'm Mark Bell, and welcome to markbell.com. Thank you guys for joining in. I want to share with you guys some things that should be some things that you get yourself to a point where these things are no longer negotiable. These are things that you're going to do often. These are things that I have done. These are things that I've built up a resistance towards the outside world to always make sure that these things happen. These are things that my friends have done. These are things that a lot of people that I've helped have done, that have lost 10 pounds, 50 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds, maybe even put 50 pounds on their bench or put 20 pounds on their squat, whatever the case may be. But these are the things that we want to try to develop some consistency towards. And when we're trying to develop consistency, we want things that are simple and we want things that are reasonable. You know, what are some reasonable changes for you to make? So keep in mind, I'm not suggesting that you just all of a sudden out of nowhere incorporate all of this. What I want you to do is I want you to get to a point where these things are no longer even difficult for you. They're barely things that you even think about. For example, we'll start off with one of my favorites, and that's the 10-minute walk. 10-minute walk should be a no-brainer. Everyone should be doing a 10-minute walk. There's not a lot of good excuses or good reasons on why you wouldn't do a 10-minute walk. Even if you're a triathlete and you're super fit, I would still say, hey, go on a 10-minute walk. Maybe sometimes have some headphones on, have some of your favorite music, but also sometimes just enjoy the wilderness, just enjoy being outside, enjoy the smell, the sounds, the sights of being outside. And on top of that, just listen to your own heartbeat as you're going. Listen to the sounds of your own feet making contact with the ground. The more that we can take those 10-minute walks, out of, just walking on concrete all the time, the better off we're going to be. So if you can get to a trail or something like that, that would be fantastic. But I'd love for you to get to a point where even 2 or 3 or 4 10-minute walks in a day are just as normal to you as using the bathroom, are just as normal to you as having 3 or 4 meals a day. One way to do it is to have every time that you drink a cup of coffee or every time that you eat during the day, have that be a cue to hit up a walk. Maybe every time you get on a phone call, hit up a 10-minute walk. I mean, these 10-minute walks, they don't have to be brutal. You don't have to be doing them at some crazy fast pace or anything. So even if you wanted to scroll through Instagram, which I don't really suggest, I'd rather have you concentrating on the walk. But even if you did that, even if you're scrolling through some emails for a little bit on your 10-minute walk, you're kind of multitasking, getting 2 things done at once. But if you need to take a phone call, it's very simple to take a phone call just as you're on your walk, as long as you're able to still have that reception. This leads me to my next thing that's simple and effective and easy to do. You should be feeding yourself frequently throughout the day. Maybe you're somebody that likes to utilize some of the benefits of intermittent fasting, but even with utilizing intermittent fasting, you still should know when you're going to eat, and you should still know what you're going to eat. To build this into your daily life, this can be kind of difficult, but you should never leave your household. You should never leave to go to work. You should never, even when you're just staying home, you should always have a good idea of what you're going to eat. On top of knowing what you're going to eat, you should know approximately when you're going to eat. I'll give you an example. I woke up this morning, I reached in my freezer and I grabbed out some steaks because I know that my first meal of the day is going to come around 3 or 4 p.m. and I wanted those steaks to be thawed out. I wanted those steaks to be room temperature for when I eat. So I prepared. When you prepare and you plan ahead, you're planning and preparing for success. When you don't do that, the opposite happens. If you don't prepare, you're preparing to fail, right? You've heard the statement before. So make sure that you're prepared. Now, you might not want to do intermittent fasting the way that I'm doing it. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you're not prepared to only eat twice a day. Maybe that would be too drastic for you, and that's totally fine. What I would suggest to do is to start to have a habit of eating often, but eating quality foods and trying your best to ditch and get rid of snacks. If you can't get rid of snacks, maybe you just replace snacks. Maybe replace your Doritos every afternoon after you eat lunch. Maybe replace those with some cottage cheese and some fruit. Or maybe you replace it. Find something that you like. I realize you might not like cottage cheese. Find an option that you feel is viable for you. I love hard-boiled eggs, one of my favorite, snacks. But most of the time when I eat, it's very, very rare for me to have a snack these days. It's always a meaningful meal that will help with my advancement, even if it's a dirty meal, even if it's a quote unquote cheat meal. even if it's something that's kind of like off menu, I still view that as being productive because I'm having that to satisfy a particular need for a particular period of time to maybe enhance the entertainment value of whatever it is I'm doing, or enhance the experience with my wife. Maybe we're out at a restaurant, we get some Italian food and we drink some wine and we enjoy ourselves and we even have some dessert. So sometimes in those cases, I really like to utilize just the idea of like, is this going to enhance? How does this help? How does this hurt? But in my opinion, that's still helpful because that one cheat meal right there, boom, gets it done. And now I need to work twice as hard the next day to be able to distance myself from how good that meal was. That's the only hard part for me, is the mental side, to switch my mind back to, all right, we're back on the plan. Distancing myself from that can sometimes be difficult. A very simple thing to implement, though, is this idea of feeding yourself frequently and feeding yourself with adequate quality foods. And you want to do so multiple times a day. How many times a day? That might be up to you. I would say 3 to 5 times a day. If you're somebody that wants to get a little bigger and gain some muscle, maybe it's 6 or 7 times a day. But somewhere between 3 to 5 should be a pretty good sweet spot. Another thing that's very simple to do is utilize protein leveraging. Try to eat more protein than you do anything else, and try to eat protein with every single meal. You heard me just say 3 to 5 meals. Well, all 3 to 5 meals should have protein in them. How much protein? Kind of hard to say exactly how much protein, but you might want to go by the size of your hand or by the size of your fist. That might be adequate, because you think about it, a bigger person's probably going to have a bigger hand. A smaller person's probably going to have a smaller hand. If you want to weigh and measure things, you can go that route as well, and you can weigh out 6 to 12 ounces depending on your size, depending on your hunger level of how much protein you want to eat. Protein, I've said this many times before, shouldn't count. It shouldn't count against your caloric intake, in my opinion. You can look up a lot of the information from Dr. Ted Neiman. He's got info. A lot of the leading experts in the world understand the impact of protein and protein leveraging. And protein, it's not really an energy source. I'm not saying that it can't be utilized as energy, because your body can utilize the amino acids from the protein as energy, but usually those are some odd circumstances where your body decides to do that. Protein is not a distinct energy source the same way that fat is, and the same way that carbohydrates are. So the whole point here is that if you fill up on protein, you'll be less likely to overeat. There's a lot of science that shows this, there's a lot of research that shows this, and you can utilize that to your advantage to get the body that you've been looking for, to get the body that you want. Because when you have adequate amounts of protein, it's going to be more and more difficult to overeat. I'm not just talking about liquid protein. I'm not just talking about a protein shake, because a protein shake is not going to fill you up the same way, and it just doesn't go through all the same mechanics and it doesn't go through all the same process that you chewing up a piece of steak goes through, you chewing up a piece of chicken. When it comes to protein leveraging, I think it's important that the pre-meal, we'll call it a pre-meal load. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to kind of load yourself up. It's what you eat before you eat to make you less hungry. In South Park, Cartman explains to Starvin' Marvin, he explains to him that an appetizer is what you eat before you eat to make you more hungry.
You see, Starvin' Marvin, these are what we call appetizers. This is what you eat before you eat to make you more hungry.
Well, in this case, a chicken breast is what you eat before you eat to make you less hungry. That's what protein leveraging can do for you. So I highly recommend that you do that. If you start to follow all these principles, all these ideas, it starts to really add up. The next thing that we need to do is we need to hydrate. How much water do we need to drink in a day? Well, the information on this is changing quite a bit. And depending on the temperature and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're staying hydrated. But there's really no reason to go out of your way to try to drink tons of water. However, anytime you're thirsty, you should drink some water. I would also suggest that anytime you're hungry, that you might want to try to drink some water as well. You might notice a 6 or 8 ounce glass, or maybe 12 ounce glass of water might not only quench your thirst, but it also might quench your hunger. Because sometimes we're mistakenly reading hunger for just being thirsty. So you might want to try to fill up on some water. But you don't need to carry around a gallon jug. That whole thing is definitely, in my opinion, it's overblown, it's overdone. It's not a necessary thing. I think that when you do that, you strip your body of minerals and its Anyway, it's just not productive in my mind. But making sure that you have enough water throughout the day is a way to make sure that your body is balanced, and to make sure that you're not getting, weird signals of being really hungry or weird signals of being really fatigued. The other thing that we have to manage our fatigue, we have to manage our stress. So when it comes to these little devils right here, whooping, when it comes to the phone, you got to be really careful you got to manage that as well. If you have a stressful day at work, what usually ends up happening with your diet? You have a fight with your significant other, you have a fight with your best friend, and you got that looming feeling in your stomach. It just doesn't feel right. Things aren't right in the world. You don't feel good about some of the decisions that you made earlier in the day. What usually happens to your diet? Usually goes in the tank, right? Well, if we have bad feelings from the different comments that we left on somebody else's page, or the communication that we had with somebody who left a nasty comment on something that we did, or even just the act of seeing those nasty comments, what impact does that have on our health? It has a massive impact on our health. It has a massive negative impact on the choices that you're going to make after that, because now you're in a shit mood. And being in a shit mood, what does that do? It causes you to make shitty decisions. In this world, everything is almost always about how you feel about yourself. I actually can't even think of circumstances where it's not. That's how powerful it is. It matters. It matters a lot about how you feel about yourself. That's why I'm so obsessed with markbell.com. That's why I'm so obsessed with getting this message out there to you, because I recognize that. I want to help people feel better. I feel amazing. I feel really good. At 43, I feel better than I did at 23 in terms of my mental capacity, in terms of what I can do with my mind. The different ways I can interpret things are way far advanced from what I was able to do years ago. And even in terms of my exercise, being able to do things differently. I used to be able to lift some of the crazy weights, squat over 1,000 pounds and bench over 800. I don't have access to that anymore. But what I have access to nowadays is so much more. I have access to so many different things that I can do through fitness that make me feel really good about myself, that make me feel really proud about myself. And I want to be able to give that to you guys as well. These are just some of the things that me and my friends do on a daily basis. We try to get in these meals every day. We try to get in a certain amount of protein, 1 gram per pound of body weight every day, no matter what. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. You could have a little wiggle room on it, but you want to go in hard on these concepts and these ideas. And you want to get yourself to where walking, 3 times a day for 10 minutes is not even something hard to do. Because remember what I've talked about in the past as well, is that you don't want to force yourself. As soon as you find yourself not forcing yourself to do stuff is when you're going to find yourself making the most amount of progress. When you're just doing it because you know that the end result is going to be something that you want and that you desire, and it's of interest to you. Think about somebody that's trying to quit drugs. Think about somebody that's heavily involved in drugs or heavily addicted to drugs. They know that they know the negative impact that it has. They know what it does to them. But they're addicted to the drug. There's some people that out of nowhere just decide, this is no longer my life. This is no longer what I'm doing. This is not a death sentence, being addicted to this drug, because I can make a decision to just stop it. And they don't care of the physical pain. They don't care of anything. The most interesting thing to them at that moment is to get off of that drug and to never look back. And people are strong enough and able to do that. You should be able to do the same thing with your nutrition. You should be able to do the same thing with your strength training. I know that you can do it. Hopefully a lot of this information that I'm giving you right here and right now helps empower you to do that. Lastly, we always have to talk about sleep, especially when we're talking about ways of managing stress. It is important that you get enough sleep. So please, try to, rather than setting your alarm to wake up every day and trying to wake up super early and kick ass every day, set your alarm to go to bed. Set your alarm, let's say you want to be to bed by 9 p.m. or let's say you want to be to bed by 10 p.m. Probably more reasonable for some of you. You want to be to bed by 10 p.m. Set your alarm for about 8:30. You got 90 minutes. You know that things are winding down, and you know that you need to get your butt ready for bed. Get that phone away from you at that time and start to kind of unwind and start to prepare yourself for bed, because your sleep is just as important as your training. Your sleep is just as important as your nutrition. And there's a lot of evidence and a lot of science that shows, Even just one bad night of sleep can have you wake up the next day with glucose levels that represent that of a pre-diabetic from one bad night of sleep. I mean, doesn't that suck really bad, right? So make sure you're getting in the proper amount of rest, the proper amount of recovery. On top of that, we already know we need to be training, right? So we need to train about 3 times a week. And then in addition to that, if you want to follow along with some of the stuff that I've been doing, I've been sprinting, 1 or 2 times a week. But those things are kind of icing on the cake. The lifting, but we need the lifting and the sprinting and stuff like that. We need those simple things that you can do on a daily basis. These things are going to be repeatable. If you're forcing yourself to go to the gym, or you're forcing yourself to do sprints, or you're forcing yourself to jog, it most likely is not going to last very long. I know you have people out there yelling, literally yelling a different message to you about how you need to get up and get out of bed and get after it. And I know that you guys seen me waking up early, but some of the things that I do, I recognize that they might not be for you, and vice versa. Some of the things that you do are not for me as well. Find stuff that can be repeatable. Find stuff that's simple. I want a lot of the things in your life to be easy. I want to be able to recommend a workout to you, and I want you to go, that's easy. I want you to be that way, because something that's easy is probably something that you're going to do. Over a period of time, you can increase the difficulty so it becomes a challenge, so it becomes more exciting. Strength is never weakness, weakness is never strength. Catch y'all later.